Hey guys, Wano here. A while back I made a video called the cheapest places to buy a budget gaming PC in South Africa. It got decent views, so I decided I want to make a part 2 about it because some of the specials are not there anymore and I'm going to be looking at more and more options. But before we get into that, please remember to subscribe if this video helped you in any way or if you enjoyed it. So in the last video we talked about Wootware, Takealot and Evetech, the main 3 companies that I know of. And it has come under my attention that there are a lot of other companies that do the exact same thing, but I'm still only focusing on these 3. Reason being that I've only used these 3 and I only trust these 3. I will do a video about all the South African PC companies that I can find if this video gets to 100 likes. But moving on to this video, let's ask you guys these questions. What do you want to do? Do you only want to buy certain components like graphics cards, CPUs or something like that? Do you just want to buy a complete gaming PC but you're on a strict budget? Do you want to buy a PC but buy it part for part so you can kind of like build your own rig? And how long are you willing to wait for your parts? If you're looking for the cheapest place to buy PC components, I would suggest looking at all 3 websites and comparing the specials and parts they have because they regularly have specials on different components. But let's start with Takealot. Our build is going to be as affordable as possible without sacrificing too much frames when gaming, so it should be at least a quad-core processor, a 2GB or equivalent graphics card, or very good integrated graphics, and 8GB of DDR4 RAM, etc, etc. If you want to buy a DDR4 motherboard, you can expect to pay around 1,300 Rand for an Intel Socket 1151 board and 1,450 Rand for the AMD AM4 socket equivalent. If you want to get yourself a new CPU, you can expect to pay around 1,550 Rand for the cheapest Intel 4-core CPU, which is the Core i3-9100F. Now remember, you're going to need a graphics card if you want to buy the Intel CPU. If you're going for the AMD build, you can expect to pay around 2,200 Rand for the AMD Ryzen 3 3200G, which is an APU with Vega 8 graphics, so you can still play esports titles such as CSGO and Rocket League with it easily. Alright, moving on to graphics cards. Now, a lot of people make easy mistakes here. Some just see the words 1GB or 2GB and think it's good. Oh, you couldn't be more wrong. You can easily get an Nvidia GeForce GT210 1GB for 400 Rand, but you're not even really going to be able to play CSGO properly with it. The cheapest worthwhile GPU would be the Nvidia GeForce GT1030. It's still not top of the line, but it should give you about the performance of the Vega 8 internal graphics of the Ryzen 3 3200G. It would also cost you around 2,000 Rand for the cheapest model. Moving on to RAM. At Takealot you can expect to pay around 600 Rand for the cheapest 8GB of DDR4 RAM. If you happen to have DDR3 RAM and you want to upgrade, you can expect to pay around 750 Rand for 8GB of RAM. Moving on to question 2 of Takealot. Do you want to just buy a complete gaming PC but you're on a strict budget? To be honest, I wouldn't suggest doing that, since most of the complete PCs they sell are made for office purposes instead of gaming purposes and are more expensive than some of the other websites. Moving on to question 3. Do you want to buy a PC but buy part for part so that you can kind of build your own rig? I kind of already answered the question, I guess, but I'll show you a page of the cost for everything if you're going for a budget gaming build. So, as you could see, here we went with the AMD build, because even if the parts are a little bit more expensive than the Intel equivalent, you are ultimately saving more money than you would by spending on a graphics card. Here we went with the Asus Prime A320MK motherboard, the Ryzen 3 3200G processor, 8GB of 2400 MHz DDR4 RAM, a 235W gaming power supply, a 1TB hard drive and the Armageddon Nimitz Micro ATX case. Everything adding up to a total of 5,805 Rand with free shipping. Before we move on to Wootware, I just want to remind you guys to like the video if you haven't already, and please subscribe as I make a lot of other tech related and gaming related videos. Moving on to Wootware, starting with question 1. Do you only want to buy certain components like a graphics card, CPU or something like that? Wootware and Evetech are a lot more PC-centric than Takealot, so their prices, models and types of parts differ from Takealot. For the cheapest LG A1155 Intel motherboard, you can expect to pay around 1,750 Rand, since some of the more affordable models are out of stock at the time of recording. For the AMD AM4 equivalent, you can expect to pay around 1,280 Rand at the time of recording, thanks to the ongoing special they have. Moving on to CPUs. If you want to buy the cheapest 4-core Intel CPU, you can expect to pay around 1,300 Rand for the Intel Core i3-9100F. And just a reminder again that you are going to need a dedicated GPU to play games with this CPU. For the AMD Ryzen 3 3200G, you can expect to pay around 2,000 Rand, which is 700 Rand more than the Intel equivalent, but it has the Vega 8 integrated graphics. So with that being said, let's talk graphics cards. For the cheapest GT 1030, you can expect to pay around 1,500 Rand, which is 500 Rand cheaper than Takealot. For RAM, you can expect to pay around 650 Rand for the cheapest 8GB of DDR4 RAM, and unfortunately for the DDR3 users, the only RAM they have in stock are the G-Skill Sniper 16GB of RAM for a whopping 1,920 Rand. So let's say you want to buy a complete PC. Without the hassle of building or upgrading it, how much will Wootware charge you? Another unfortunate thing about items being out of stock is that the cheapest build is going to cost you 22,000 Rand. I mean, it's a Ryzen 5 3600 build, but it's not what this video is about. So moving on to question number 3. Do you want to buy a PC, but buy it part for part so that you can kind of build your own rig? If you're going for the kind of the same build as the one on Takealot, you can expect to pay around 6,300 Rand for everything. Now, there are some key differences, like the power supply is now a 600 watt instead of a 235 watt or 450 watt depending on who you ask. Do you need 600 watt for a budget build? No, but it's the cheapest one they have right now, so there you go. So the specs here are as follows. We have the MSI i3-9100MA Pro motherboard, 8GB of 2400MHz DDR4 RAM, the Ryzen 3 3200G processor, a fractal design 600W power supply, the Thermaltake Versa Micro ATX case, and a Western Digital 1TB hard drive. Of course, this is all without shipping, but the shipping costs between 130 Rand and 300 Rand, so don't stress too much about it. So let's move on to the powerhouse of online PC gaming in South Africa, Evetech. Starting with question number 1. Do you only want to buy certain components like a graphics card, CPU or something like that? For the cheapest Intel 1151 socket motherboard, you will pay 1,700 Rand, and for the AMD AM4 equivalent, it will cost you the same price. If you're in the market for a new CPU, you can expect the Core i3-9100F to cost you 1,850 Rand and the Ryzen 3 3200G 2,100 Rand. If you are looking for some DDR4 RAM, you can also look in your pocket for 700 bucks, because that is what it is going to cost you. As for graphics cards, the MSI GeForce GT 1030 is going to cost you 1,800 Rand. Now, most of these prices might seem intimidating comparing to the other websites, but I think the reason for that is that they want you to utilize their upgrade kits instead of only buying a new CPU or a motherboard, etc, etc. Like I said in my previous video, they have this wonderful option called upgrade kits. Here you can get the Intel Core i3-9100F, a motherboard and 16GB of DDR4 RAM for 3,700 Rand, which will ultimately cost you 500 Rand cheaper than buying it from Takealot and 600 Rand cheaper than Wootware. Or you can buy the Ryzen 3 3200G upgrade kit for 4,000 Rand and ultimately save 200 Rand compared to Takealot and cost you 100 Rand more than Wootware. Moving on to question number 2. Do you want to just buy a complete gaming PC but you're on a strict budget? Well, then you are at the right place. At Evetech you can get a fully built PC with a Ryzen 3 3200G, 16GB of DDR4 RAM, a 512GB SSD, a 400W power supply and a default black case for 6,000 Rand. That might seem like a lot, but you can't even compare it to the other websites because they don't sell PCs like this. Moving on to question number 3. Do you want to buy a PC but buy it part for part so that you can kind of build your own rig? So what we went here for is the Ryzen 3 3200G processor, the Asus Prime A320MK motherboard, 8GB of DDR4 RAM, the Antec NX120 mid-tower case, a GameDS 500W power supply, and a 1TB internal hard drive. All this cost in total 6,000 Rand. So let's talk about the last question. How long are you willing to wait for your parts? So if you are a patient person, Evetech is the right place for you, because for everything that we have ever ordered there, we have waited around 2 weeks for it to arrive. Now this might not be the case for those of you living in Gauteng or close by, but for those of you living in the Western Cape or close to that, this is what you can expect. Takealot is a bit tricky. It all depends on where the items are in stock. So let's say for instance you live in Johannesburg, you just have to try and find items that are in stock in Johannesburg, and you should be getting your items within a week. Same goes to Cape Town or even the Western Cape. Then we have Wootware. I don't know how long they take to ship to Gauteng or the other provinces in the northern parts of South Africa, but even with their cheaper courier option, they took 2 days to deliver my new mic and 1 day to deliver my new RAM. So in conclusion, do you only want to buy certain components like a graphics card, CPU or something like that? I would say go take a look at Takealot and Wootware. Both have incredible deals. Do you want to just buy a complete gaming PC but you're on a strict budget? Take your pick at Evetech. They have the best bang for buck. Do you want to buy a PC but buy it part for part so that you kind of build your own rig? Once again, I would say go to Takealot or Evetech, except if you're looking at something like an upgrade kit, then Evetech might be what you need. And last but not least, how long are you willing to wait for your parts? The quickest company that I have faced so far is Wootware. They are the best for impatient people like me. So there you have it. These are the in-depth analysis into buying PC components online in South Africa on a budget. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video and that it helped you in your endeavors into the wildlands of buying online. If it did help you, help me by tapping that subscribe button, ringing the notification bell and liking the video. If you want to watch some of my other videos, please click on a playlist on the screen right now. And with that being said, thanks for watching. You guys are awesome. Cheers.